Alright, so for episode 24 of this game, we are now going to move on to the International A license. And I think I've left this for long enough now, but I might as well turn the autosave on, since I do know that is one thing that I might as well do from this point here on out, since I have not had it on for the entire game up to this point. Yeah, by the way, it is optional over whether or not you want the autosave on or off, but I think I've been spending long enough now to not really do a lot with it. And before we move on to the International A license, let's save the game just in case, so I don't lose anything. And so we will head back to the license centre. We've done our first 3 licenses, and now I think it's a good time for us to get on with the International A license, just because I want to get some more cars for 3. So 16 tests again, including the coffee break where we'll be driving a Nissan 350Z Roadster. And a lot of these cars we'll be driving are interesting ones, because we're driving supercars, we're driving sports cars, also hot hatches, and we've also got some race cars involved as well for the first time in this entire license centre, as we've got the Mitsubishi Pajero rally car, the CELICA rally car, or one of them, and we also have, at the end, the Nissan R92CP, something which I have no doubt in saying we'll be spending plenty of time before then, trying to figure this whole thing out. But let's begin with Midfield Raceway, where we are starting with the Jaguar XJ220. Around this section of corners again, like we did in the driving missions with the VW Golf GTI, and this description is pretty long, but of course you can read it in your own time. Of course you can always pause the video to read through the description at your own pace, but either way, let's go before I waste any more of your time, and see how long it takes for us to get to dark gold. Since I would imagine this is probably going to take a bit of trial and error to get there, but I more or less know what I need to do, so I'll get it worked out eventually. I always do. And we set a silver on our first attempt, but we are a second behind the gold. So, time now for the trial and error to begin once again. This is not going very well at the moment. And not looking too good at the moment. The way I currently see things. Never mind, it was good enough. It was a bit messy to be sure, but it still got me to the gold because I was just that little bit faster. But either way, there we go. It's done. We have got the test beaten in the Jaguar XJ220. And now we move on to test number 2. I did actually think about saving the replay here, but I know there's others that will come along the way, and I will probably consider saving one of the next ones. Anyway, this time we are using an Alfa Romeo Spider, is this? I think that's what this is. Anyway, description's pretty long, so again, do whatever you want if you want to read through the full description. But do be warned, this description is very long. That's probably not going to be very interesting. And heading through Degna 2, I probably was a bit hesitant there on the acceleration, but I think we've got it this time. And no, we don't. I think that was probably where I made my mistake. Oh well, we just have to keep trying until we win, I guess. I should not have ridden that curb. I think that was probably the curb that costed me some valuable speed. Okay, let's see. Can we manage to do something heroic here? Okay, that's where I lost my time before. It was the end of Dagna 2. Okay, nailing the exit. There we go! Got there eventually. I just had to make sure that I did not go too deep into Dagna 2, and then that was when I pulled off the pass on my Ghost. But either way, there we go. Another one bites the dust. And that now takes our gold license trophies up to 50. And this time we are at Fuji Speedway 90s, where we are driving the Nissan SKYLINE GTR R34. I'm pretty sure there is also a trick to getting the gold here, but as to what that is, well, you'll just have to pay attention to find out what that is. But I know there's a way to do it. And we're not even close. Well, looks like we've got less than 8/10 to make up. So let's try again and see if we can manage to do better. Unless I've got it this time. Holy shit! I have no idea how I only just got it. Jesus Christ. Literally by 1,000th of a second, I fucking got this gold. I did not think that was gonna work, but it somehow did. That is unbelievable. 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 It really is. I was basically just coaxing my way off that corner exit, and I actually got it to work. But there we go. Somehow, some way, I got the gold by 1,000th of a second. And now we move on to test number 4, which will hopefully be a bit more fun than that was, but either way, I somehow got the gold by 1,000th of a second. Just. And now we are at Apricot Hill for test number 4, where we are driving what I think is a Ford Falcon. And here's your description. Of course, you can read that at any time. This is definitely a Ford Falcon, I'm sure it is. Or more specifically, the FPV GT. In other words, technically it's a Ford performance vehicle. And part of the reason I know that is because, well, I've watched the V8 supercars. Not necessarily this era, but I can tell it's a Falcon. I'm sure it is. Because of its shape and design. And just its unmistakable touring car look. Anyway, let's see how far off we are. We are less than half a second off. Closer than I thought we were going to be. Anyway, let's try this again and see if we can move half a second up. We're now just less than 0.2 off. Or in other words, we're above 1.5 tenths off. And that's the gravel on both sides. Okay, let's see. There we go. Got there eventually. And you know what? I think just because this is essentially an Australian supercar, I think I'm actually going to save this replay, because this is essentially a road car variant of the Ford Falcon that you most likely see in the V8 supercars. Although unfortunately the Falcon is not really in the supercars championship anymore, because it's since been succeeded by the Ford Mustang. Which in all honesty I have no problems with, but I can definitely say that whenever you think of the Supercars Championship, you normally tend to think of either Holden or Ford. And there are plenty of Ford and GM fans that ironically exist in Australia as they most likely do in America. Because the Supercars Championship, that's basically their bread and butter when it comes to racing series. But either way, I figured I had to give credit to it because, well, you know, as I said before, the FPV GT, it basically is a Ford Falcon, and I'm probably going to keep saying that. But anyway, on now to El Capitan, and where this time we are driving a Seat Ibiza. And there is your description, read it at your own pace if you want. Now, let's go for one lap of El Capitan. And using the right toggle stick to give myself the pace, as well as more or less the revs to get the optimal start. Well, I almost completed the first lap, until right before the end, the car decided to understeer into the grass. And it was right before the front straightaway as well. So, I nearly made it, but at the same time, I failed right before I could be successful in getting to the finish line, which is what I almost did, but then I basically went too wide through the last corner, and that was more or less what costed me the time. And this time, I'm going to step on the brakes so I don't run into the rocks again, since that's pretty much what happened before. And also doing a little upshifting as well. You have to stay behind the pace car at all costs. You must not pass him, regardless of how close you get. You need to stay behind the pace car at all costs, regardless of where you're positioned. And it'll stay that way until we get to the end of this license, where for the super license we won't have to rely on the pace car to lead us around anymore. And in all honesty, the pace car is there for a reason, because it's there to help you find your way through these corners, and also how to more or less get the best possible lap times. As much as the pace car can be annoying from time to time, when you're trying to set the best possible lap time, you still have to stay behind it nonetheless, regardless of how much it may piss you off. The pace car is there for a reason, and you have to stay behind it at all costs. And is this going to be a gold first try? Only just. By 14 hundredths of a second, we get the gold on only our second attempt. Which is one thing I was not expecting, but we got there anyway. So there we go. That's now 5 tests done, and next up will be at Autumn Ring, where we are driving a Honda S2000 around this section of corners at Autumn Ring. I might also consider calling it a day once I get to the halfway point, because I've been at this now for a while, and also because I am getting pretty hungry, so, you know. Anyway, there's your description. Let's try and see if we can nail this bitch. Which I'm strongly convinced in saying is going to take me a few tries to get there, but we will try, because that's what we always do. And we're half a second off on our first attempt. Okay, let's try and see if we can find half a second. Okay, I think we might be far enough ahead now. Okay, are we gonna get it this time? Yes, we do. That's now 6 tests down. And I gotta say, that one actually felt like a lot. That was actually a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. That one cornering section of Autumn Ring, I think that's actually a lot of fun, just to work your way through. But, anyway, another one bites the dust. And now we head on to Trial Mountain, where this time we are driving the Yellowbird. And there's your description. A bit long for me to read through the whole thing, so I'm just going to get on with the lesson. I know a lot of you aren't really too bothered about whether or not I read through the description. Okay, just got to be stable through here. And then I'll work out what to do for the rest of the run. Okay. Okay. I think I might have it this time. Okay. Smooth on the exit. Okay, I think we've got it this time. We've got it by a long way. We got the gold on that one by nearly 6/10. That's awesome. Anyway, 7 tests down, and still 9 to go. Plus the coffee break. So, on now to the halfway test of the International A license. And then I think after this I can pretty much call it a day, because I've been at this long enough now. As this time we're driving an Alfa Romeo 156. You know, the hardest thing about this course is you've basically got to pretty much be dead on when you're heading through this very sharp right-hander. You've just got to have full commitment to the corner if you're going to pull it off. And that to me is probably where the biggest concern is. Because if you don't nail that hairpin, then basically your run is done. I think that's what the point I'm trying to get across is, but either way, we are still trying. And we'll keep trying until we do get the gold. Because that's just how stubborn I am. Because that's just how stubbornly committed I am. But this time, I think we've got it. And we do. Again, took a few tries to fully get used to it, but then, once I did, I slowly but surely worked out how to get there. So yeah. There it is. Gold in the Alfa 156. And now, I think that's a good time for me to call it a day, so I'll head over to our next coffee break, and then I think I'll get on with this another time, because, well, I've been at this long enough now, and also because, well, this test is no doubt going to be the hardest, so, yeah, anyway. On to another day. Another day has arrived, so let's now get on with our coffee break for the International A license. And my god, we are basically working our way through a maze. So I can guarantee there will be plenty of fails before I pass this. Anyway, here we go. Not going to scroll through the information. I more or less know what I need to do, so I'm just going to go on with it. I think that's my best option. Okay, let's see how we go. Of course, I do predict myself to fail a few times before passing this. Because, well, that's normally what I do when it comes to these types of tests anyway. Am I gonna pass it first try? And surprisingly I do, but I have got a lot of time to make up. I need to make up nearly 5 seconds if I'm gonna get the gold. So let's try this again and see how much further we can get. You know, I'm not gonna lie, that was actually really hard. That's probably, out of all the coffee breaks to do, that one is clearly the hardest to get the gold on, if I'm being quite honest with myself. And I gotta say, you've basically got to have some real sim racer wizardry to actually get the gold on this. And you've also got to look like you know what it is you're doing when it comes to just where those cones are positioned. And believe it or not, that's actually the first time I've successfully got the gold on this coffee break. First time ever I've actually done it. And I get it by just under a quarter of a second, no less. But either way, there we go. Now we move on to part 2. And where this time we are at Opera Paris for the first time ever. And where we are driving a Citroën Xsara around these streets. Again, not going to read through the whole description because it's a bit too long-winded for me to scroll through the whole thing, but anyway, time now to see if we can belt it through the streets of Paris. Well, at least we got the silver. I'm less than a second off, but I think we can get there. So let's try and see if we can gain less than a second. So the main key to getting the gold here is to absolutely nail the bus stop section. And if you can manage to do that, as well as also nail these upcoming corners, then you should have a strong chance of working your way to the gold with this one. And I'm pretty sure that as long as I don't touch the outside walls, I should have this one this time. Oh yeah, I've definitely got it this time. I've got it by a long way. By 4 1/4 tenths, I scored the gold. And now, we get to move on to our next time trial test. But there we go. We have beaten Street Guide 4 at Opera Paris. I'm also pretty sure at the centre of that bus stop is supposedly a war memorial. At least I think that's what it is. Even though personally I've never been to Paris, but that's what I think it is. Anyway, 9 tests down, 7 tests to go. As this time we are at the 2005 variant of Fuji Speedway. In other words, the revamped guys that we basically race on today. And ultimately, I think we're driving a Toyota CALDINA if I'm not mistaken for this one. Anyway, here we go. I've pretty much driven hundreds of laps around this course before. I'm strongly convinced in saying that getting to the gold is not going to be too tricky to get, because as I do with all my other one lap guide runs, I basically just go hell for leather. Okay, 6 tenths. Anyway, let's try this again. So we need to gain 6 tenths. So we need to gain 6 tenths in order for us to get the gold here. Let's try and see if we can do that. Since I more or less know where precisely my mistakes were made before. but we'll see how we go. I of course have driven at least hundreds of laps around Fuji Speedway, so I pretty much know this course very well, to put it simply. And I also know that I have got to be mindful of not passing the pace car whilst I do it. Fortunately, however, the pace car is faster than me anyway, so luckily I do not have to worry too much about having a top speed advantage. Because to put it simply, I fortunately don't have one of those compared to the Nissan SKYLINE pace car that is in front of me. He is very much faster than me, is the point I'm trying to get across. Although I still have to step on the brakes if I think I'm going to run into him. But fortunately, however, since this car is basically a wagon, the odds of me at least controlling the weight of the car and also making sure that all four wheels stay on the track, I'm actually pretty good at that, even though there are no sector points to tell me how fast or slow I am. But either way, I don't think it really matters. And this time we're on it. By less than 0.2, we go 0.8 faster than our previous best. And I think in terms of the one corner that most sim racers choose to hate on this course would basically have to be that one chicane down at the bottom of the hill. I think that's probably the one part of the course that most sim racers hate, and understandably so, I might add. Although personally I'm not one of the haters of that chicane, I do understand why most gamers hate that chicane, because of how much of a nuisance it is to get through. Anyway, on now to Test 11, and where this time we are doing this section of Swiss Alps again. I'm pretty sure this section also featured in GT3 if I'm not mistaken. But this time we are driving a Mitsubishi PAJERO. So let's see how we go. Well, at least I got the silver. Just. So let's try this again. Can I actually get faster this time? Yes I can. I go faster by 0.2, but not quite enough. But we're right on the cusp of the gold now. Okay, I think I know how to nail this now. I've got everything figured out now, in terms of what needs to be done. Okay, so tight on that entry. I also have to remember to downshift, go deep to the inside, so I have the corner entry I need, and just go foot to the floor, and there we go. A little wide there on that corner exit, but still, I got the gold by more than enough. And that's now 11 of 16 tests, now secured with the gold. This second half is actually going by pretty well so far, even though most of my struggles did come from the coffee break, but in all honesty, I was expecting that. And now we are at the second half of Chamonix, and where we are driving a Toyota CELICA rally car this time. So we're switching from dirt to snow. And I think I know my way around this course. Okay, let's go. There is actually a trick to getting the gold here, but basically it does require you to use the walls in order to be successful, and I almost thought for sure that was going to be a third consecutive failure in the same corner, since that corner has caught me out twice before. And is this good enough for a gold? Oh, it's good enough for a gold by a long way. 2 seconds! And I didn't even cheat to get there. That's unbelievable. I did not think I was going to be that far up when I got the gold. That is unbelievable. I was literally 2 seconds up on the target time. And on my first completed attempt, I actually got the gold. That was amazing. There's no way that should have been possible, but I found a way to make it possible. And now, we are at the trickiest track of them all, the Nürburgring North Course. And where for this, we are driving a BMW M5. And this one is going to be interesting, because we are driving a 500 horsepowered super saloon, well, 400 horsepowered super saloon, around this one section of the Nürburgring. This is going to be interesting, but I think I know what it is I need to do here, so we'll just have to try and see if we can get it. How did I not fail there? Anyway. How far off am I going to be? That's the real question. Okay. Only, what? 5+ tenths off? Okay, let's try again. Okay, I think I might have it this time. And I do. By 0.06 of a second, I improved to score the gold. Yeah, 2 things you have to remember about the Nürburgring North Loop is that basically this course is very bumpy, it's also very narrow, and if you're not committed to going absolutely full send through some of these corners at the Nürburgring, in the hopes of saying that you most likely will make those corners, if you go even a whisker too fast, then this course will basically bite you like a king cobra, and you will basically die if you get it wrong. I know that because it's happened to me so many times, where I've got certain corners wrong and I've just wound up going into the fence as a result. But now we are at the last corner of Twin Ring Motegi, and where this time we are driving a TVR Tamora. I'm not going to scroll through the information because, well, it's a bit too long, plus it would make this boring. There we go. I just had to make sure I got the corner exit done correctly, and then it was there. But there we are. 14 tests down, and a lot of these have actually been easier than I thought they were going to be. But either way, there we go. Another one bites the dust. And now we have to move on to the full lap of the Nürburgring. And where I can guarantee I will probably fail this a few times before actually passing it. Getting the gold on this one, if you're going full send through some of these corners and you make it through, this course is actually pretty easy. Well, setting the lap on this course is probably one of the fucking hardest things you can do, but if you go fast enough, you can actually get the gold with this one pretty easily, if you're committed to going through the corners the way you are, and you can stay on track whilst you do it. Because, as it says here, this is a very long map, as it is 20 kilometers of length, which I think is equivalent to about... I think this course is about 12.8 miles altogether. But either way, there's your description. Okay, let's get on with the lap now. Where I can guarantee I will probably fail this at least once before passing it. And we'll see how we do. So, as I would have predicted on my first attempt, I very much failed. And that was ironically before I even managed to make it about a quarter of the distance, because, well, it is of course the Nürburgring, and there is a reason why they call this track the Green Hell. Because not only are you surrounded by narrow roads and trees, but it's also because even with all of the Armcos that surround you on this course, there are still certain areas where if you do make a mistake, you can most likely die. So you've really got to be on it, and you've also got to keep your concentration for pretty much the entirety of the lap, whilst also being able to make sure that you do manage to keep yourself on the track, and also making sure that, aside from doing all that, you also still have to stay behind the pace car. Thankfully, however, this is the last guide run where we need the pace car to show us the way around what's essentially a decades-old racetrack, if not nearly a century-old racetrack, which has been more or less well-maintained, and these days, of course, hardly gets any proper racing done on it, unless it is for the endurance events that happen around this loop 2, maybe 3 times a year. And outside of that, well, the rest of it is basically just tour guide runs. And although I don't know the names of any of these corners, I've had plenty of experience on driving this course by knowing just how much of an ordeal it really is just to get one lap set without having at least 1 or 2 slip-ups in the process. And the one thing that should also be mentioned about this test is We are doing this in a Mercedes 190e. And I should also mention this thing is ironically powered by a Cosworth engine. This car very much dominated the DTM one time when it was in that competition. And it is fair to say that this car definitely stands out among the touring car icons of the day during the Group A regulations of touring car racing that happened in the 80s and also the early 90s as well. Because basically you had this Cosworth powered Mercedes along with the Nissan SKYLINE GTR R32, also known as the Godzilla GTR, and the third one, as well as my personal favourite, well, those two, also the first generation BMW M3, and last but not least, my personal favourite of all those, the Ford Sierra Cosworth. All four of those cars, by the way, were certainly known for having their periods of domination during the peaking years of the Group A regulations. And the other reason why I like the Ford Sierra the best as well, because for many years I have very much been a staunch Ford supporter, like lots of other Brits, I might add. If there is one thing I can guarantee that we 21st century Brits love, it's that a lot of the time we always love a Ford. And I think that's probably the one manufacturer that most likely signifies our acceptability between Britishisms and Americanisms. Ford basically is the one manufacturer that just gives us the freedom to use both of our Britishisms and Americanisms, well, I guess you could say colloquially. I think that's the word I'm looking for. But anyway, we're over halfway through the lap now. We also passed by the well-known carousel. This lap is going very well, I might add. I'm definitely managing to maintain my track position, and on only my second attempt, I did not think I was going to make it this far. I thought for sure I was going to fail at least 2 more times up to this point, but amazingly, I have not. I have actually kept in control of my car, and I have also managed to pretty much keep on pace with more or less where I need to be. And I think if I get the rest of this lap right, then I should be able to escort myself to the gold by at least a few seconds. Because if you have enough experience with the Nürburgring, and you can manage to keep your car on the track long enough, as I said before, then the odds of you actually scoring the gold with this test are actually pretty high ones. And now we're onto the 1.2 mile long straight, and I of course am staying out of the slipstream of the SKYLINE, because if I do get in a slipstream, then that will pick up some unwanted speed that I don't need. And I'm convinced in saying that we should be on pace to score the gold because of how close we are to the start-finish line for the lap. So heading down the hill, almost hitting 150. You have got to lift just before you get to the end of the straight to get everything squared away. And is this going to be a gold first try? As we get off the corner, I think it probably is. And yep, gold first try by less than 2 seconds. So pretty easy to get the gold on this test once you get everything worked out, and also once you know precisely what pace you need to set. But now that I've got this out of the way, might have been a relatively slow but steady lap, but then again, I do have all the experience to show I know my way around the north loop of the Nürburgring. And now we move on to Le Mans, where we are now ending this off by driving a prototype. The Circuit de la Sarthe no chicane layout, and where we are driving a Nissan R92 CP down the incredibly fast Mulsanne Straight, and where we end this off following on from both the Indianapolis and Arnage corners at the end. Let's see how we go, since I reckon this is probably going to take a few tries to get it done, but I think I have an idea over what it is I need to do here. And what's my time going to be first? Okay, I'm a second off. So let's try and see if we can do better. Hi there, Editing Jordan here, and you are probably wondering why I suddenly decided to go into voiceover for this last test when I eventually did manage to get the gold. And well, the simple reason for that is, well, because this is quite literally one of the hardest tests you have to do in pretty much this whole game. Because you're basically just barreling down the Mulsanne at pretty much well over 230 miles an hour. And basically, whilst you're literally barreling down the Mulsanne, you've then got to more or less slow that way down to about 60 miles an hour by the time you get to the end of the first Mulsanne Straight. And I can definitely say this test is one glorious bastard to get the gold on. And I am glad to say that after doing this enough times, well, got through that corner at about 54, but altogether it was still enough for me to eventually put together enough of a gap for me to eventually score the gold. But yeah, you've got to be super committed to this. So here I am now, barreling down the Mulsanne and heading into the two corners of Indianapolis. Corner right here, this is Indianapolis corner, and then right after that you've got Arnage. You really have got to be fully committed to this, and you've really got to know what you're doing. But eventually, I made it. Okay, back to the episode now. I was really starting to think this was not going to work out, but once I really got my head down and I was really just focused on making sure that I did everything as correctly as I possibly could, that was how I eventually got to the gold by just under 0.03 of a second. And that was pretty much somehow how I did it. My god. That one really caused my head to rattle because of just how many fucking bumps you just have to cope with while basically just pelting it down the Mulsanne. Anyway, there we go. That was our graduation test for the International A license. I'm also pretty sure that took me at least an hour and 15 minutes to get through those other 8 tests. And with the shot of Le Mans in the background, we have now officially acquired the International A license. And so, for getting all bronze, we get the Turismo 270R from 1994, which is basically a Nissan Silvia S14, more or less. For getting all silver, we unlock the Nissan GTR Concept Tokyo Show from 2001. And for all gold, we get the Dome Zero from 1978. I gotta say, I actually quite like this thing. I think this thing looks good in my opinion. But anyway, there we go. We've done it. We have got all 3 of the prize cars we can get from the International A license. And it all started off with me actually achieving the gold in Coffee Break 4. For this part of the video at least. Anyways, 4 licenses down, and all that is left is the special license, also known as the Super license, and where we have got another 16 tests to do, plus the coffee break, which I can assure you is going to be a real maze. But anyway, there we go. The International A license is now ours. And all that's left for us to do now is to go after the Super license, which I will do another day, but not immediately because I have a lot of events to get through between now and then, and that's probably what I'll be doing next. So, let's go through the cars we won. So first and foremost, we get this Turismo 270R from, as I said, 1994. This is the car we get for all bronze, and it's a pretty good one at that, I might add. In fact, it's so good I might even consider using this car to start off the professional events. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So yeah, that's for all bronze. For all silver, we get this Nissan GTR Concept Tokyo Motor Show model from 2001. I'm also pretty sure this was just a prototype design for what would eventually become the Nissan GTR by the time they introduced that car in 2007. And of course, no money we get for selling it. I will also consider using this thing at some point. And now, for scoring all gold, we get this. The Dome Zero from 1978. A car that, believe it or not, I officially used to open up my GT Concept playthrough. And I do also have a thumbnail shot of this car as well, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, we get a Japanese classic. And I gotta say, for a concept car, this one looks pretty good. But anyway, there we go. That was the International A license. And next time, I think we'll get through the 3-lap battles of the driving missions, coming in the next episode of GT4.